Welcome to this deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens.
Oh, a classic.
It is. And I think most people know the story, at least the basic plot.
Grumpy old miser, right? Gets a little visit from some ghosts and changes his ways.
Yeah, and we all love a good redemption story. But we're going to go a little deeper here.
Okay.
What is it about this story that speaks to us even today, after what?
Over 175 years?
Over 175 years later. I mean, this story's been told and retold, and we always come back to it.
Yeah, and I think one reason is that Dickens really tapped into something very universal with this idea that even the most hardened heart, right, can change. But he doesn't stop there. He also kind of embeds some social commentary within the narrative.
Oh, yeah.
He uses Scrooge as a lens to kind of look at the vast inequalities of Victorian England.
That's a good point. And just to get us started, I think one of the reasons this story is so powerful is because Dickens is such a master of language.
Right.
I mean, he could have just said Scrooge is a miser, but he doesn't do that. He makes us feel it.
Right.
I mean, just think about the description we get in Stave. Hard and sharp as flint, solitary as an oyster.
Yeah.
I mean, you can almost feel the chill radiating off of him.
Right. He's emotionally frozen, almost like part of him died, along with Marley, his business partner.
Well, and speaking of Marley, his arrival is one of the most iconic scenes in literature. I mean, you've got this spectral figure draped in chains, forged from his own greed, appearing to Scrooge with his dire warning.
It's a great scene, and I think Marley's message is really crucial here because it kind of lays the groundwork.
Yeah.
For Scrooge's transformation, he tells Scrooge, mankind was my business. Charity, mercy, forbearance, and benevolence were all my business.
Wow.
He's basically saying that by focusing only on profit, he really neglected his responsibility to his fellow human beings.
That's the heart of it, isn't it? I mean, Scrooge at the start, he represents this worldview that values wealth above all else. I mean, this is a man who says, the poor should decrease the surplus population.
And Dickens very cleverly uses the Cratchit family, I think, to really embody the human cost of this ideology.
They're struggling, but they haven't lost their compassion or their capacity for joy.
Right. They represent everything that Scrooge has rejected in his pursuit of wealth.
It's a powerful contrast. But getting back to the ghosts for a moment.
Okay.
I always found it interesting how each of these three spirits represents more than just a simple time element.
Absolutely.
They have these distinct personalities and symbolism that really enhances their message.
Yeah. The Ghost of Christmas Past, for example, he's described as both youthful and aged.
Oh, interesting.
He's holding summer flowers and holly. He embodies that kind of bittersweet nature of memory, how the past can be both joyful and full of regret.
Oh, that's a really good point. And it's during these visits to Scrooge's past that we really learn so much about him. We see him as a young apprentice working for Fezziwig, and Fezziwig treated his employees with respect and generosity.
Yeah, what a contrast to how Scrooge treats Bob Cratchit.
Yeah, huge contrast. And then there's that really poignant scene with Belle, the woman that Scrooge loved and lost. And we actually see Scrooge watching his younger self break down in tears.
Yeah.
It's like this flicker of humanity, this reminder that he wasn't always so emotionally closed off.
Right.
You know what I thought was interesting about that scene is that Scrooge almost seemed relieved when Belle breaks off the engagement.
Oh, yeah.
It's as if he had already started down that path of prioritizing wealth over love,
That's a great observation.
What do you think that says about his state of mind at that point?
Well, I think it suggests that his transformation wasn't just triggered by Marley's visit. I think there was already a part of him that was longing for something more, something beyond material gain.
So the seeds of change were already there. It just took the intervention of the ghost to make them blossom.
Exactly. And then we move on to the Ghost of Christmas Present, who offers us this very different perspective.
Yeah, this ghost is practically overflowing with abundance and good cheer, like the embodiment of the holiday spirit. He's surrounded by this giant feast, and he brings Scrooge face to face with all this joy and generosity that exists in the world, even amidst hardship.
Right.
And then he takes Scrooge to the Cratchit home.
Yeah. And we see their simple Christmas dinner, and despite their poverty, they're filled with love and gratitude.
Yeah, and it's here that Scrooge starts to show some real concern for Tiny Tim.
Right. He asks the ghost, tell me if Tiny Tim will live.
And the ghost's response is chilling.
Oh, yeah.
He says, I see a vacant seat and a crutch without an owner.
Ooh.
And then he uses Scrooge's own words against him.
Oh, wow.
If you be like to die, you better do it and decrease the surplus population.
That's gotta hurt.
It's a turning point for Scrooge. He's forced to confront the consequences of his worldview. I mean,
Right.
it's not just some abstract economic theory anymore.
Yeah.
It's a matter of life and death for a child.
Right. And then we come to the most terrifying of the three ghosts.
Oh, yeah.
The ghost of Christmas yet to come.
This shrouded, silent figure.
Right. Embodies the unknown, the inevitability of death, and the potential consequences of our actions.
What I find so interesting is that this ghost doesn't even need words to get its message across.
I know. It's just that presence is enough to fill Scrooge with dread.
Totally. And the future that it reveals is bleak.
Yeah.
I mean, Scrooge sees himself unloved and unmourned. Even the people who owed him money seem relieved that he's gone.
It's harsh. And there's that one scene with the thieves,
Oh, yeah.
dividing up Scrooge's possessions after he's dead, and they're just callously joking about his miserly habits.
It really drives home the point that material wealth doesn't mean anything if you haven't made any real connections with people.
Right. It's a reminder that your legacy isn't defined by the money you make, but by the way you impact the lives of others.
Exactly. And then, of course, Scrooge is confronted with his own neglected grave.
Yeah.
Overgrown and forgotten.
God.
This realization just breaks him,
Yeah.
He begs for another chance. He promises to change his ways.
And that brings us to the most satisfying part of the story.
Scrooge's redemption.
He wakes up on Christmas morning a changed man.
Filled with joy and this desperate desire to make amends.
He's ready for a fresh start.
Yeah. And he declares, I will live in the past, the present, and the future.
Wow.
He's committed to honoring the lessons that he's learned from each of the spirits.
And his actions speak just as loudly as his words.
He sends a giant turkey to the Cratchit family, makes a huge anonymous donation to charity, and he becomes a true friend and mentor to those around him.
He even seeks out the gentleman that he rejected earlier, when he was asked for a donation.
Oh, yeah.
He offers him a large sum of money and a heartfelt apology.
It really shows the power of forgiveness and compassion.
It's a beautiful moment, and he goes from being this miserly curmudgeon to a pillar of the community.
It really is a complete transformation, and while it may seem kind of fantastical,
Right.
it does speak to something deep within us.
Yeah.
This hope that change is always possible, even for those who seem beyond redemption.
I love that.
Makes you wonder, are we so caught up in our own lives that we miss these opportunities for connection and kindness?
Right. Like maybe we all need a visit from some ghosts to shake things up a bit.
Yeah, maybe not literal ghosts,
Yeah.
but the story does encourage us to think about our own chains,
Yeah.
those habits or beliefs or fears that hold us back.
Absolutely.
And I think what's really important is that Scrooge's transformation isn't just about becoming good,
Right.
It's about actively working to undo the harm that he caused.
Yeah. Making amends.
Yeah, and he becomes like a second father to Tiny Tim.
He does.
Make sure he gets the care that he needs.
And a true friend to Bob Cratchit gives him a raise, treats him with respect.
Yeah, and he doesn't just make these grand gestures and then go back to his old ways,
Yeah.
He's committed to living a life of generosity and compassion.
It's a reminder that change is ongoing.
Yeah.
It takes continuous effort.
So what can we take away from all of this? How can we apply these lessons from A Christmas Carol to our own lives?
Well, I think the story offers a really powerful message of hope. It tells us that it's never too late to change, to reconnect with our humanity, and to make a positive impact on the world.
And it's not about these big grand gestures or waiting for a supernatural intervention.
Right.
It's about making those small conscious choices every day to be kinder, to be more generous, to be more present with the people around us.
It's about recognizing the humanity in everyone, regardless of their circumstances.
Yeah.
And extending a helping hand whenever we can.
Just as Scrooge learns to embrace the spirit of Christmas, we can choose to embrace that spirit of generosity and compassion in every aspect of our lives.
And in doing so, we not only enrich the lives of others, but we also find a lot more meaning in our own lives.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into A Christmas Carol, we'll leave you with this final thought. What are the chains that you might be carrying? What steps can you take starting today to break free and embrace a more meaningful existence?
Remember, the power to transform your life and maybe even touch the lives of others is always within your grasp.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.